Hi, welcome to the Also Called podcast, where we're asking hard questions about our place in this hectic world.
Join us as we dig into the truth about who God is, possibly discovering that we are also called. So Anita, now that we've talked about Joanna and where she was coming from and what Jesus did for her and then her response to that, how do you see her story applying to our audience? And what is a practical takeaway that our listeners and us can put into practice?
I think the one thing I want to touch on is that faith and works, right? We have this conversation about faith and works a lot. About people say, "Well, I'm doing good deeds. I'm doing good deeds. So look at me." Okay, but then what is your faith saying about that? Your faith is like, I'm doing this because of my faith, or I'm doing this because this is what I feel I want to do. So why are you doing that? That is the question. And so we think practically, well, I'm doing it because it says I'm supposed to do good things. No, you'll do the good things because of that faith. I think it can cross the spectrum of what that looks like. It could be you're a teacher and you notice a kid in the classroom needs a little bit extra help. You provide a coat, maybe their family, whatever that looks like for that person. Or you're an attorney and you have extra money in your bank account to provide free service for someone who doesn't have the ability to access an attorney. Whatever that looks like, wherever you are in your life, whatever that looks like practically, you can take your skill, your knowledge, your talent, and provide it to someone. Whatever it looks like, it's very simple, but I think it's why you're doing it because you feel compelled, you feel like you want to, it's fulfilling, and it's at a greater service than to just yourself.
I like how you said it in the chapter. It's kind of an overflow, an outflow of gratitude from being forgiven or being saved or being healed from what you were before. And
Right.
all these things that you're doing practically to give back is just an overflow from that.
You almost like you can't help but share the good you feel. And I don't even think you want to do it because you want people to see it. You're doing it because you want to do it. And you want it to be a positive impact on those around you. It won't. If you feel like you want people to see it, you may want to go back and reevaluate why you're doing it.
I just want to say a couple of things. There is a theme throughout these disciples that we've been discussing over the last few weeks, and that's community. So even in the scripture where Joanna is listed, she's listed in a group with other women who are also serving. I think practically, sometimes we don't have to recreate the wheel. We don't have to do anything major. Getting plugged in with community. So visit churches. There's ways that you could serve there in the church, whether it's greeting people at the door, teaching a class, or not necessarily teaching a class if you don't want to take that step, but you can be in there. If it's the children, they always need extra people just to be there to contain everything. But there are so many ways that you could just get plugged into a church and just ask them, what do you need? Maybe it's running the announcements that are flashing up before the service. So there's tons of things that you can do where help is needed. So you just have to be willing. I always go back to time, talent, treasure. So the time, whether it's on a Sunday or a community nonprofit, even going and serving walking dogs one day a week, something like that. So your time, talent, like you mentioned before, whatever skills that you have, and of course, financially, if you're able to support a nonprofit in your community. But then there's also simple little things like having purses or bags filled with feminine products or wet wipes, things like that, granola bars, whatever. Have something like that in your car. And if you see someone in need, just hand them a bag. Sometimes we try to overcomplicate it, but really, Jesus, he just needs our willing heart.
I like that. Joanna just took what was in her hand. She had money, she had affluence, so she was able. We don't know that about Susanna or about Mary Magdalene. So she just took what was in her hand and she just did out of her gratitude. I'd like to kind of revisit that as a second thing as that's practical is shifting that mindset of when you've been set free for something taking a moment to consider the gravity of it. I think as a culture, we're so quick to move on to the next thing. Okay, I feel better, or I have a new perspective, or I'm healed from this trauma. What's the next thing? And I think one of the things that we have a sign over our bedroom door as we're going out, and it says, meet each day with gratitude. And it's a reminder to my husband and I to practice gratitude because it's really easy not to right now in the world that we're living in. It's really easy to focus on the negative and focus on the craziness that's going on around us. But if we stop in gratitude and recognize the gifts we've been given, whether it's financial or just having children or having our animals, or let's talk a little bit about like how do you practice gratitude practically? Like one of the things that I do is an intentional mindfulness or in prayer and just say thank you back to God. And me sitting down to list off all the things that I'm grateful for seems to shift everything in my head and it puts me in a way better place to start my day. Do either of you have a different way to like experience or practice gratitude?
I do have a journal. I'm one of these people, like I have to have all the tools, not that you need the tools to have a relationship with God, but sometimes you have to go through the ritual of it. So sometimes I don't use anything, and sometimes I need like the stack of my journal where I just write things out to process it and get it out. But then I have a journal that is just specifically for gratitude. And I try to do, even if it's just bullet points, and sometimes it's reframing. So if I have a really rough day, sometimes it may just be, thank you, God, for my job that allows me to pay my bills. And, sometimes you may have to reframe it if you're struggling with the coworker or the manager or whatever the case may be. So, but that's probably one of the things that I do is try to reframe something that I'm struggling with into something that I can be thankful for.
I literally have to mirror that statement uh, and work very hard to reframe circumstances when they don't seem to fall how I feel they should fall. So if I'm driving late from work and I'm like, why am I late? I'm aggravated, frustrated. I think, well, thank you, because maybe something else was going to happen had I left at the time I was supposed to. So I look at that in a moment. I go, geez, why would I be agitated about something that may have been a blessing in disguise, so to speak? People say the phrase, I have to go to work. I reframe that and say, I get to go to work. And so thinking about Joanna, she got to be able to witness, Jesus and his ministry, despite kind of having this very limited, maybe restrictive lifestyle at home. Her salvation, her renewal spirit allowed her to translate that into what she got to do, how she got to expound upon her purpose. And I think that I think people need to think about that it's not a limiter. It's more of like how you just reframe the positive aspect of this unique gift we get.
Just to piggyback off of, sometimes the circumstances don't look like we want them to. In those moments, another mantra, prayer, whatever you want to call it, I have to say is God is sovereign. So, I'm at that red light and I'm 10 minutes late already. God is sovereign.
I think the thing I learned from today and from working on this chapter is that no matter where you are, a renewed faith can give you a whole new leash. And I say this earlier, and I know I'll say it again, a new leash on life. It seems so cliched, but it really does kind of give this new fire in your belly, this new renewed spirit that you can enjoy the life you have in a different way, in a different context, and it's more fulfilling. It's almost like you want to share what you have, who you are, how you are with others, and have them have that same feeling. It's a unlimited joy, so to speak. We can be down and have a moment, but knowing I have this gift, this love, this perpetual renewal, I can go back and say, today was a bad day. I can go back and I can start anew, and it's with that grace that I get to do that.
I'm just learning there are so many ways to serve in the kingdom. And for people like me, a lot of it is behind the scenes, but some of you may be called to be out front and lead the way. So
And I think I'm just learning that gratitude changes everything. And I'm really trying to, in the last year, trying to practice that a lot more as a way of life, not just a tool when things are rough, but like truly being thankful. Well, thank you so much, Anita. And thank you all for joining us. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Joanna. So drop us a line below in the comments, or for a larger conversation, you can go to our social media, which are in the show notes below. And join us next time as we dive into the women disciples we explore in our book, The Other Disciples, with a woman who has less known about her than Joanna. There's a ton to learn from her, Susanna. And remember, stay curious
and keep
Thank you
seeking.
so much for joining us today. Also Called provides a space for honest conversations about the truth of who God is, who we are, and the relationships He wants us to have with Him, each other, the church, and ourselves. This episode was just the start of the conversation. Be sure to check the show notes for extra resources to go further. You can also find our social media sites to join the discussion. Don't miss our next chat by subscribing to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Also Called is part of Bible and Pop Culture, a crowd-funded nonprofit that allows us to provide our content to start great conversations for free. You can help us keep doing this by checking out BibleandPopCulture.com or AlsoCalled.org's Donate Subscribe buttons with a one-time gift, supporting us monthly, or sharing us with someone who might like the conversation. Thank you for being a part, and see you next conversation.